If a man is found lying with a woman who is married to a husband, then they shall both of them die, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman, and so shall you put away evil from Israel. This is the law that the Pharisees were referring to when they brought to Jesus in John chapter 8 a woman that they said they caught in the very act of adultery. They said, Moses said we're to stone her. What do you say? And at the beginning of that, it tells us that they did this to tempt Jesus, to tempt him to say something that is contrary to the Mosaic law, because it was a common acceptance that God spoke through Moses, that the books of the Torah were inspired by God. It was God's word to man brought to them by Moses. And they all recognized the inspiration. Now Jesus is declaring that he is God's spokesman, that he is bringing them God's word. If they can get Jesus to say something that is contrary to what Moses has said, then they can say he can't be of God, because he is speaking things that are contrary to what God has said. We know God has said through Moses. They knew Jesus was always compassionate towards the sinner. This upset them. They accused him of being a friend of sinners. They were constantly upset because he kept company with sinners. And thus, knowing his compassion, his love, and his forgiving attitude towards sinners, they felt that they had now a great case in which they could trap Jesus into saying something contrary to Moses. They knew that Jesus would not want to see this woman stoned, that he would be compassionate towards her. And yet, if Jesus would say, stone her, then they knew he wouldn't. So they brought her to Jesus and said, we caught her in the very act of adultery. Moses said, we're to stone her. What do you say? And you know the story of how Jesus knelt and wrote on the ground without responding to them, without answering them. And so they kept pressing the issue, what do you say? He finally stood up and said, I say, whoever among you is without sin, you throw the first stone. Then he knelt and began to write on the ground again. I'm sure he was writing their names and the sins that they were guilty of committing. And they began to leave one by one until no one was left but the woman. Jesus then stood up and said, where are your accusers? And she said, I guess I don't have any. And he said, neither do I condemn you. John tells us that the law came by Moses, but grace and truth came to us by Jesus Christ.